Ladies and gentlemen, Laminar Research, X-Plane.
I'm one of the X-Plane developers, and before we talk to you about X-Plane, just a quick aviation quiz. So, hypothetically, you're flying in a single-engine turboprop with a service ceiling of 28,000 feet, and you look at your radar, and you see that big green blob to the north in Florida, coming from Colombia. What do you do? Do you maybe pull an immediate U-turn and come right back to where you started? Nope. You don't have to. You just, clicker is very jittery today. Sorry. All you have to do is set the window clear. And you're good to go. We thought at the beginning today that Austin and Philip might not be here to talk about their stuff, but fortunately they were able to make it around the weather. So today we're going to be able to tell you about all aspects of X-Plane. It's been fantastic to come to the show and just see how much the entire flight sim community has grown. We've been coming to these shows for a couple of years, and a couple of years back the question was, does flight sim have any future? And clearly it has a very strong future, and it's been fantastic to see how much of that has involved X-Plane. You know, we've seen all these third-party add-ons that are making X-Plane look fantastic. Orbis Truth got everybody's attention because it just looks amazing. We've had a whole bunch of Just Flight aircraft that have come out that look really cool. And it's great to see people taking X-Plane 11 and taking all of its capabilities, its PVR, the sound capabilities, and just pushing it as far as they can go. So today, for the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to tell you about a couple of things that we're doing next. We're going to talk about what we're doing next with the X-Plane mobile product. We're going to tell you about our next X-Plane 11 patch, which will be coming out very soon. Austin's going to tell you about some of the things he's been doing with real-world aviation using X-Plane. And we're going to give you an update on our quest to update to the Vulcan and metal as our rendering engine. So to start things off, I'm going to bring Chris Serio up here, and he's going to tell you about X-Plane mobile.
I'm Chris Serio. I'm, I guess, the mobile projects manager, developer, something.
Mobile czar.
Mobile czar. All right. So I'm going to give you a brief view of the product in case you're not familiar with it, and also talk about where we're headed with it. So the year is 2008, and Austin had been chained to an unannounced iPhone and iPad in the basement of Apple somewhere, working 24/7 basically for a few weeks to make a flight simulator run on a device with 25 megs of RAM basically. And they came up with this. And about a year later, I did the Android port, which had to be 25 megabytes of disk space for the entire app to fit in. So when we created the product, it had to be completely different than our desktop product, and it had to run on quite a small device as far as power goes. So I have a little chart here of how much code was shared between desktop and mobile, and as you can see, that tiny sliver, which I exaggerated just so you can see it on here, is the shared code in 2008 between desktop and mobile, and the rest was written specifically for mobile, never to come back to desktop. Fast forward to today, and the mobile product is almost entirely the desktop product. Wow. And I guarantee next year when I come and I do this slide again, it's going to be even greater than 73%. Desktop and mobile are merging together dramatically, and the reason is that mobile hardware is starting to get faster and faster. The GPUs are getting more powerful. The CPUs are, it's almost like a laptop now without a keyboard. It's amazing what can be done with it. So the product itself is starting to look more like desktop. In fact, that is the mobile 737, and it is the desktop 737. Pretty much everything that functions on the desktop product functions on the mobile product. All these switches actually do something. So if we look at X-Plane mobile aircraft, highly detailed 3D models, the interior, the exterior, everything is done just like the desktop product. All of the systems work as you'd expect. You want to start the airplane, you have to enable the external power, you have to start the APU, you have to have bleed air going. Like everything is the way it is just like on desktop. So all the cockpit is interactive. All the controls, the levers, the switches, the knobs, everything is interactive on the touchscreen device. They also have the realistic Garmin the G430s and 530s in some of the aircraft, the FMS here that folks work tirelessly on, that actually works. You go into them, plan your route. Has Navigraph data, so if you have a Navigraph subscription, you'll be able to use the data there. So it's basically the desktop aircraft on a mobile device. Here's just some of the views of some of the cockpits that we have, and there are more beyond this as well. So, as you can see, we're pretty proud of how good they look on mobile devices. So, where can you fly with them? Well, we have these awesome 5 regions, right? There's 5 whole regions, and you could memorize the names of all of them, because there's 5. You can fly for tens and tens of miles until you run out of scenery. And when you run out, we tell you you're out of space, and we flip you around, and you can fly back the other way, which is really cool. So you save fuel, and there's less time wasted climbing up and down. You just get to fly around. So this is, these are our regions. Until Globo, which is global mobile. And now, these are where you can fly. And here, on the West Coast. And here, in Northern Europe. And Eastern Europe. And we even have Australia, which the desktop didn't have at one point. And if you live where Danielle lives, almost in Antarctica, we even have scenery there. So this is what we've been working on. We've been working on global mobile. The mobile scenery is going to have auto-generated cities and towns, just like our desktop product has. All 35,000 airports that are in the world will be there. And we've even managed to take the gateway airports from the desktop product and bring them over to mobile. So all the work that the community has done to make gateway airports look just like the real airports is coming to the mobile product. And the way you get this is by streaming it from the cloud to your device. So here's an example. This is just flying over Brooklyn here. You can see the AutoGen city here. This is on the runway in Midway. You see the nice skyline there. Here's a pullback shot of Atlanta. Now this is our gateway airport. If you open that up on the desktop product right now, it's the same layout. It's the same terminal buildings. It's the same objects. It's a little bit of a closer shot here you can see. Even closer now with a ton of cars. Some terminal buildings. There's one in Providence. There's the Class C airport. Here's Amsterdam. Here's Naples Municipal in Florida. And then I realized everybody shows off the big airports, but what about all the little airports? So this is one in my home state of Connecticut, Oxford. It's a Class D airport. It's not really well known. There's no major airlines that go in and out of it. But that's what the east side of the field looks like. There's a couple hangars, and that's what it looks like. So then I said, oh, let me pull up another one that I like to go to. This is Glens Falls, upstate New York, where I did my first solo cross country. And I was looking at this is right from our gateway, and I thought, yeah, that's what I remember it looking like. So I went to Google Maps, and here's the Google Maps view of it. So if you look side by side, I mean, that's pretty good. And that's done by somebody in our community. So there's people in the community that are doing this by hand, and they're uploading it to our Scenery Gateway. And from our Scenery Gateway, now it's always gone to our desktop product, but now it's going to our mobile product as well. I just want to go back a couple slides and show you one other feature I meant to talk about. Right, so this replaced the globe. We used to have a globe where you would tap the thumbnail and that would be you picking which region you want to go to. But at the top you have a search bar. And you can type in the name of an airport, or the ICAO of the airport, or the name of the VOR, and you could build a route here. And you could prepare your route ahead of time and say, oh, I want to fly from JFK down to Miami, and I want to go via this route. And you can plan ahead, and then you can pack your flight, and we'll download all the tiles and navigational data that you need along the way, so that if you know, I want to plan the flight now, but I'm going to be on an actual airplane later, or I'm going to be in a library where I don't have good internet access, you can prepare your flight ahead of time, and it will download all the scenery along the way, it'll download all the navigation data along the way, so that you can use your Garmin GPS or your FMS along the way to fly your route when you're offline. I think that's all I have for slides.
When do we get this?
Soon.
2 more
We're
weeks.
still
2
shooting
more weeks.
for this summer. So I would say shortly I'll be putting out a sign-up sheet for beta testers, because we're going to need Android and iOS beta testers. So when that happens, you know we're going to be, release will be imminent. All right, so I'm going to get it back to Ben.
Thanks, Chris. So, Chris has been hard at work with his team on global mobile Lomo, but we've also been working on X-Plane desktop as well. And so we'd like to take a few minutes to talk to you about X-Plane 1135, which is the next update to X-Plane 11. So there's a couple things that I want to show you today. And I just want to start with the X-Plane Global Airports. So we kind of do this every year, and 2 years ago we got up and we said we have 4,447 airports. We thought that was pretty cool, because that's over 4,000 airports, and we were frankly pretty amazed to have gotten that many. And then last year we came by and we had 7,310 airports, and that was really amazing because that's over 7,000. But when we release X-Plane 1135, we will have broken the 10,000 mark for global airports that are 3D, and this blows us away. With us today, we have Julian, Jan, and Michael Minhar. All 3 of them are here. Stand up for a second, guys. So these are the guys. This is the brain trust that has been working so hard with the community, working on the tools, working on the moderation, working on the technique, showing what can be done. And it absolutely shows the results. Let me just show you some of these airports. This is what comes out of the box. This is what our community created, and they just look fantastic. The amount of detail is amazing. People are taking advantage of the new terminal kit. They're taking advantage of some of the new line markings, and we're just amazed at how good this stuff looks. And I think it's great that the 3 of them got to meet here. This is the first time they've all met in person. And this is one of my favorite things about flight simulation, is the people who I've gotten to work with, and then I actually get to meet them in person. So that is coming in X-Plane 1135. Now, to keep the gateway ever going, we have to give our gateway authors good tools. And so in the next update, we're going to ship this new pack of boats in our library. So if we want to have good Lego brick airports, we have to have good Lego bricks. We got fantastic piers in 1130. Now we have the boats to go with them. And this is a nice detail because very often real airports are right on the water's edge. And when you see the most detail in the scenery, it's right before you land. And now people can really model the waterfront just right. So it's a really nice touch. I also just want to mention World Editor 2.0, which got finished up a month ago, 2 months ago. And it's a huge step forward for World Editor. It has a ton of features, including live ortho imagery, so you can see what you're doing while you work. It's just so much better for our authors. So that's also been exciting for us because of what it does for our community. Another thing going into X-Plane 1135 is going to be 2 landmarks that everyone's been waiting for. First of all, we're shipping in Washington, D.C. So take a look at this. foundation of beautifully done landmarks for some of the historic buildings in Washington, D.C., as well as just very careful treatment of the entire surrounding area. I used to live in the D.C. area for a while, although I have since recovered. And flying around it, it had this familiarity that comes from this local detail and accuracy. Besides D.C., we're also going to ship New York City. This is something that Austin and I have been looking for years because we just love the architecture, the way New York City looks. And some of these landmarks just look absolutely great. We've got the Statue of Liberty. We've got the new Freedom Tower, modeled in fantastic detail. And Cristiano put in all the major bridges in New York City. And this is something that really just adds a great touch, because when you see the island of Manhattan, you have to see the bridges that really connect it to the rest of New York and make it look great. And again, the architectural details are, they just look really good. So both Washington, D.C. and New York City are going to ship in X-Plane 1135. The next area I'd like to touch on is sound. We have 2 new aircraft that are going to get F-Mod sound upgrades in X-Plane 1135. And the first one is our King Air, which has brand new sound. If you've ever heard a PT-6 start up from outside, you know it's a sonic experience. Take a listen to this. So I'm very excited for this one. We're also doing our first airliner with F-Mod sound. We're adding F-Mod sound to the 737. So I've got a little clip of that as well.
Danielle's been doing our sounds, she's doing an amazing job. But one thing we invented is the how nauseous is Chris, and the more nauseous I get, the better the sounds are. So one thing you can't get on these loudspeakers is the low frequency hum and vibration that you get in headphones. And I sat in this seat in the simulator, started up the engine the first time, and I felt as nauseous as I do on a Southwest flight. That droning hum when the hydraulic pumps come on, the fuel pumps come on, and then the engine starts up. It made me feel nauseous just like the real plane does, so I think she really captured it.
Danielle, stand up for a second. Danielle is here all the way from Vegas. The newest members of the X-Plane team, and to have someone doing sound at this level is just fantastic. You kind of have have to spend time with the 737 to appreciate it, because it's not just some sounds, it's a whole space. It sounds different in the back, it sounds different in the middle, it sounds different in the cabin, it sounds different in the outside as you walk around, because all the space is localized, it's affected by the doors opening, there's a million different things you can turn off and on that are all dynamic and driven by the systems. And so it really makes for an interactive experience, and it's really fantastic in VR. If you fly in VR, having that sound in your head, and when you turn your head, you can hear that the sound was in a real space. It really adds a huge amount of immersion. So these are two really big sound upgrades for us. Now, at this point, I'd like to bring up Philip, because you can't have all this sound if you don't have the systems really simulating what's supposed to happen. So Philip actually had to do a whole series of systems enhancements so these planes could sound right. He's going to tell you about this.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Yeah, as Ben said, at some point, someone from X-Plane comes to me and asks, hey, in order to really make this work, I need more features in X-Plane. And that's what happened last year when Chris came to me and said, hey, I need an autopilot that can do more than altitude hold and heading hold. And he got all the autopilots he could ever ask for. And what happened now is, I think Daniela asked me for a better APU and stuff like that to just make the sound work real good. And I said, okay, I can do that. And we came up with a whole bunch of new systems to put into X-Plane. So first, I worked on the fuel system, not so much for sound reasons, but actually here there are sounds made by the fuel pumps that you can hear. And if you really know your king air, and I know because my wife was complaining that I don't read enough books. My wife is an English teacher, so she always wants me to read more. So I got myself the biggest and best book on flying king airs. And it's not quite what she had in mind, but it was good for X-Plane. And I learned that you can actually hear the fuel pumps on the King Air and you can test them even if the batteries are off, because, and I didn't know that either, the fuel pumps are actually hot wired to the battery and are not on the switch. So anyway, you can try this and you can actually hear the fuel pump when you're testing it before you turn on the battery. So I did a bunch of things to the fuel system, especially to help third-party developers, because I have been developing third-party aircraft myself before I came to the X-Plane core team, so I know the pain. I know the pain that the third-party developers go through sometimes to make this kind of stuff work. So I added support for different tank roles in X-Plane. X-Plane didn't really make it easy for you to define what is an aux tank, what is a feeder tank, what is a trim tank, and now we can simulate more complicated fuel systems where the feeder tanks are kept full for the engines, and then there's transfer pumps that put the fuel from the aux tanks into the feeder tanks. And we can even do things like you see on a Concorde, where during flight you can shift fuel to the back of the plane to shift your center of gravity for supersonic flight, and then as you come in for landing and go back to subsonic speeds, you have to shift the fuel back from the trim tank back into the front of the airplane with the trim pump, and all of that you can do with X-Plane as well. Also, you can define fuel tanks of an odd shape, where the arm of the fuel changes as you take fuel out of the tank. So that changes the moment of the aircraft, it changes the whole weight and balance situation. So you can define those oddly shaped fuel tanks in X-Plane now as well. And as I said, I looked at what third parties are doing, and often third-party aircraft developers lie to X-Plane about what they are doing, and I think I put in some things to help third parties to really make use of the fuel system. Same thing goes for the clean air and pressurization system. Of course, we have the 737, and there you can hear a lot of things. You can hear the pack flow, you can hear the recirculation fans and all of that. So, of course, we wanted those systems to work great in order for the sounds to be great. So, the new bleed air system in X-Plane, of course, it can take bleed air from the engines on the APU, but you can now also take the bleed air from the GPU, or ground power unit, You can use the bleed air to power the packs, to power the wing NTIs, to power the starter motors, to power the hydraulic pumps. It's a modular design for up to 3 packs and multiple isolation valves. Basically, you can model a 747 with 4 engines, 3 isolation valves, and 3 packs easily, and scale it down for a King Air or whatever else you're flying. What's most important is, because I know third parties are really particular about modeling just their kind of aircraft right, and they go into a level of detail that we don't really can for a generic flight simulator, but we're giving third parties a way to tell us what they are doing, tell us their bleed air consumption, and if they tell us the bleed air consumption for our engines, that affects the engine output. So the more bleed air you are stealing from the engine, the higher up your EGT will go, the more power you are stealing from the compressor. And of course, if you do it with the X-plane default system, X-plane will do that, but we are also allowing third parties to do that so that they get their physics right. Yeah, we have the electric systems that power all of that for air conditioning, fans and heaters, and of course that all ties into the sound. And yeah, an example of how the electrics tie into the sound. You just saw the video of the King Air starting up, and you hear a very distinctive sound starting the King Air of the igniters. That sound that you hear the igniters. So the level of detail that we put into the sound system is the frequency with which the igniters fire depends on how long it takes to charge the capacitor. And that depends on how good your battery voltage is. So if you listen really carefully, by just listening to the engine start, you can tell whether you are starting with 28 volts from a GPU, or whether you are just starting with 24 volts from your battery, or even if you're starting with 20 volts, if your battery is really weak. And you cannot only hear that, you can also see that in your starting temperature. So if you start the right engine from the battery, you will hear the lower frequency, you will see the hotter temperature, then you flip on the generator, then you start the other engine off the generator, it'll sound different, and the temperature during the start will be different. Yeah, and finally, the APU. That was what Daniela asked me to do. We need a little more fidelity here. And again, all of this is accessible for third-party aircraft developers as well. Well, you have the APU door that you need to open to get the air in. You have the starter motor and generator that makes the excuse me. And again here, the electrical load that you put on the APU generator and the bleed air you extract from the compressor, all of that is tracked and affects the APU temperature. So the APU EGT responds to the load that you put on it. The APU needs a certain time to cool down after you have taken bleed air from it. And the APU can also catch fire, and we have very graphic effects to show you what the APU fire looks like. And of course, if the APU catches fire, you also have an APU fire handle that you need to pull. Alright, and yeah, we have a little kitchen sink of other stuff that I put in just because I can. The good thing working on X-Plane, I get to put in a lot of things under the radar that Ben never asked me to, but so I can put in a lot of things, and right now I would like Daniela again and Jim Gregory to stand up, because all of what I'm putting into X-Plane is just numbers, and Jim with his modeling and Daniela with her sounds is what brings those numbers to you and what makes those numbers mean something to you. So with the kitchen sink, DME old functionality for all the radios, the audio generation so that the DME generates the identifier on a different frequency than the NAVs. Then, well, I already talked about starter motor and igniter effectiveness, changes of battery condition. I've added a lot of autopilot modes to make the King Air fly better. I added autopilot modes for Airbus, like track and FPA. We have hotel mode for turboprops. Everyone know what hotel mode on a turboprop is? No. That's when you have an ATR 42 and ATR 72 doesn't have an APU. Instead, what they do is they put a brake on the propeller is stopped, and the core section of the engine runs as your APU. So you can do that. Yeah, the instruments in the King Air, everything that's on DC dies, while the AC lies. Ask your flight instructor what that means. And the last thing is, yeah, you know, the age-old complaint about squeaking nose wheels in X-plane, and we worked on that as well, and we now have what we think is a really realistic depiction of how the nose gear steering in the Cessna works, in that it's rigid in some part and with bungee cords and elasticity in other parts. And I think this is going to be really good and will feel really realistic when taxiing. And I think that's it for systems. Thank you.
So that's X-Plane 1135. There's even more features you'll see in the release notes, but those are some of the highlights. It's the new landmarks, fantastic new sound, the systems detailing, and the public beta for X-Plane 1135 will be available on Monday. So once you get home, once you recover, click check betas in our installer, or click check betas on Steam. You can try this stuff out and let us know how it works. Let me bring Austin up. Come on up, Austin.
Can you do a little digit dance for me?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about an X-Plane use case. So with this team that's just like beyond words how good they are running forward with X-Plane, that leaves me free to actually use it. And today I'm going to tell you about a use case of X-Plane. I'm involved in a company that's working on an airplane that we are currently codenaming Ava, that tries to solve two annoying problems about airplanes. So what are the two most annoying things about airplanes other than the food? The answer is, in my opinion, they use a tremendous amount of runway and a tremendous amount of fuel. But what if they didn't? And that's the question I'm asking. I'm helping using X-Plane to find that out. Boom. So, this was taken this morning, just a few hours ago, in Columbia, South Carolina, on my Evo, on the way down here. So, yeah, that's just a few hours ago. And, so coming down from South Carolina this morning, this is what I saw. And if you want to know how hard I worked to be here, I think this pretty much answers the question. We are right here, right? And that's me up there. And that's Xavion, which is an avionics app that I wrote. And so that's what we flew through this morning to get here. And so we were not messing around getting down here. And there's Phil saying, what the heck are we doing? And then that's my airplane, obviously, where we have my normal layout. Xavion is in the middle. And then coming into land. Okay, so, there's me. Hey! All right. So, okay, so let's talk about what I'm working on. I'm working on, and this is slightly out of order, but that's fine, don't worry about it. I'm working on an electric vertical takeoff and landing airplane in Burlington, Vermont, called Ava. It's the heaviest electronic VTOL airplane ever to fly in human history, weighs up to 3,600 pounds. The first phone call that I got from Kyle Clark, my company co-owner on this, was like a year and a half ago. He called me and I was in the middle of brunch. I almost just didn't take the call, but the service was kind of slow, so I decided to go ahead and just pick up the phone and take the call. And he's like, I'm building an electric VTOL. Do you want in on the project? And my initial reaction was, no, of course not. Everybody says they're building an electric VTOL. Who's actually building it? And he said, we have our first customer and we're funded. And I said, all right, tell me more. And I designed, over the next year, I designed an electric VTOL airplane in X-Plane to use neither fuel nor runway, and I needed to do it quickly and on a budget. We took the Lance Air airframe, an RDD LX7 wing, and off-the-shelf motors, and in something like ballpark, like 1 year and $2 million, we got this. Let's see her fly. That's not a drone. My company co-owner, Kyle Clark, is flying it. Listen to that sound. So this is the future of aviation. People keep saying, where's our flying cars? Where's our flying cars? We're not not going to get flying cars, because the best thing a car can do is hug the road. Trust me, that's not a good thing about airplanes. So it just won't stop hugging the runway. That's not a good thing about airplanes. We're not going to have flying cars. Instead, what we're going to have is VTOL airplanes, use no fuel, no runway, and the sound, as you heard there, it's not that bad. And in reality, the volume here may have been just a little on the low side for where we were listening to it, but not even that much. The prop is faster than a helicopter, but a lot slower than a Cessna or something like that, and so you just get this wonderful kind of windy kind of boom sound. And so sound is the big fear of these airplanes. So it will ruin the quality of life in cities as they're coming and going. But hopefully most people decide that's a pretty darn pleasant airplane noise. Okay, so let's, so this is me and my bird. I'm constantly going up to Burlington, Vermont, where this airplane is being built. And here she is close up. So it's named Ava after my daughter. And as you can see, there's 8 electric motors. And of course, we've got dual flight control systems and all that. And in X-Plane, I designed probably about, I want to say about maybe 20 or 30 different eVTOLs with all sorts of different combinations of propellers. And X-Plane said, this is the way to go. And so I designed an X-Plane, flew an X-Plane, wrote the flight controller, I used the X-Plane flight controller, and we put it in the real aircraft, and as you saw in the video, it actually worked. So this, for me, is a use case of X-Plane. The real airplane does what the sim does. And if you go into PlaneMaker, I'm sure a lot of people in this room go into PlaneMaker, but these crazy designs in the PlaneMaker, right? Well, we actually have to build the damn thing after we built it, and that is the crazy science experiment. And here it is getting ready to repel the stormtroopers on Hoth. Getting ready to flight test in Vermont, okay? And then here we go, racing along in one of our transition tests. We've not gotten the rotor full forward yet, but we've gotten it up to about 50 or 60 knots. It has about 200, maybe 250 test flights on it so far. Okay, so as we were doing this, I was intently looking at every single prediction X-Plane was making and comparing it to the real airplane and constantly crossing my fingers and gritting my teeth that the X-Plane predictions would be similar to what the real airplane did, so I didn't lead my company down the garden path with overly optimistic results. And when we finally compared X-Plane to flight test data, the scattering of flight test data from one day to another based on the temperature and how it juiced up the batteries for that day and the calibration of the instruments, the scatter of the flight test data was wider than the difference between X-Plane's prediction and the average aircraft prediction. In other words, X-Plane prediction, no, it wasn't perfect, but it was within the scatter of our freaking instrument error. And so here's the things I did in X-Plane. Better prop wash swirl. I got a bunch of tech reports in World War II and stuff like that. Improved prop wash swirl. Delayed prop wash over the tail, which will make the airplane less twitchy in pitch. Some people say it's too sensitive in pitch. Well, one of the reasons for that is the real airplane has a delay before the prop wash hits the tail. We have that now. Varied prop wash across the disc. The disc is no longer just a constant prop wash flow through it, but it varies across the disc. Control effectiveness improvements, going again back to the NACA tech reports. And all of these things are done to make sure that the X-Plane aircraft would predict as closely as possible what the real Ava would do, and sure enough it did, okay? And, so here we are. So what we can see here is, as we move forwards, you've got the prop wash increase is these white lines, and you can see it actually build up as you move aft, because the rotor up here hasn't really gotten any prop wash yet. It's grabbing nice fresh air, but the prop wash increases as you move aft. Then the next one, you can see the flow field. Now, if you look carefully, you'll see that the vertical lines of downwash here and hover are short up at the top, and they build up down below, and so the air is actually accelerated over time and space as it moves through the rotor discs. And it's actually following an S-curve, even though that's hard to see here. Here we are from above. Now you can start to see the swirl. You can see where the prop wash swirl moves it around, and that's based on a bunch of different NACA tech reports, so we get the right activity there. Here we go with the lift, drag, and moment vectors. And so the green lines are the lift, the red lines are the drag, the yellow lines are the resultant vectors in each part of the prop. And if you look carefully, you'll see that they're actually kind of tilted differently as you get closer to the root. And that's because lift always acts at a 90-degree angle to the local flow. The local flow changes depending on how far you are out along the propeller. And so you actually see the force and the lift acting like at a right angle to the helix, and the helix angle changes across the rotor disc. Here we are moving forward. Another thing that matters a lot is downwash. because we don't want downwash from the outriggers of the flaps to push our nose up too much. We built this thing as a T-tail for that reason. And you really see how the downwash is determined by the wing. Oh, these red lines here where the flow is slowed down, you see? And so you have flow that's slowed down by the fuselage back here, the downwash on the wings, and the downwash on the rotor. All of that's being considered. So basically, I have to go over all, and this is how it affects the streamlines. And you can see these longer streamlines. All these streamlines last the same amount of time in seconds. These ones last longer in meters, obviously, because these are the streamlines that were kicked up with more energy put into the propellers. So basically, this is a full flight model overview to make sure I didn't leave anybody down the garden path with this airplane. And is that my last slide? Yep. Okay, so I was supposed to take 5 minutes, did I? Yeah? All right, sounds good.
So the final thing we have is an update on the status of Vulcan and metal. As you guys know, we've been working to move X-Plane to the Vulcan and metal graphics APIs. These are next generation drivers. We want to put X-Plane on top of them so we have better performance and smoother flight. And so the question is, are we done yet? We first talked about Vulcan 2 years ago. So last year at FlightSimExpo, we put up the checklist and we had killed off about half of the stuff we had to port to get to Vulcan. So this year, all of the Zoom animals are done. So we busted our butts last year to get this Vulcan accelerated airfoil maker. And you could hit airfoils at 200 FIPS, and we're pretty excited about this. Even though it's just airfoil maker, a surprising amount of X-Plane code has to run to get this working. So a year later, we are now doing this. This is X-Plane running the full sim, running Orbix True Earth Great Britain in Vulcan on the PC.
That's a good.
So, as Marty asked me in pretty much every marketing meeting, is it faster? Well, we do have some numbers now. Since we can actually run X-Plane with Vulcan, we can talk about the performance. But before we do this, I have to point out, Vulcan and metal improve the efficiency of your CPU. If your CPU is slow, being more efficient is going to help. If your GPU is throwing Columbus sail, Vulcan is not going to help you. So if your GPU has a hand crank, you're probably GPU bottlenecked, and Vulcan is not going to help. The idea of Vulcan and metal is this. X-Plane is sitting on top of the driver, and X-Plane does some of the work, and the driver does some of the work. And previously with OpenGL, the driver did a ton of work for us, which was great, because it made it easier to develop a flight sim, but it wasn't so great because if we weren't happy with how that work was done, there was nothing we could do about it. Now, with metal and Vulcan, the driver is very thin and very efficient, and it doesn't get in our way. But we do have to do more work, which is why it's taking a while to write the code. All those things the driver did that we never knew about, we are writing that code. So there's going to be more X-Plane, but we can still potentially run faster in total. So let's take a look at some numbers. Let's start with the green team. This is a graph of CPU performance. The bottom line is OpenGL. The top line is Vulcan. This is a frame rate graph, so higher is better. And as of now, Vulcan is faster than OpenGL in all cases. However, it is not a ton faster on NVIDIA hardware. We saw between 5 and 20% vary. It's not a big number because the NVIDIA OpenGL driver is crazy fast. That thing's got like voodoo and witches in it. So we can run a little bit faster, but it was already doing pretty well as is, but we haven't lost anything. Now let's take a look at the red team. On AMD, it's actually quite a bit of a different gap because we were having real performance problems with the AMD driver in OpenGL, and it is significantly faster in Vulcan. You know, we might see 20, 30, 40% faster. You can see the gap. This is another frame rate graph where higher is better. So this was a big win for us. We've been trying for a while to try and make X-Plane on AMD hardware run fast, and we were just banging our head on the wall with the OpenGL driver. So it was a big relief to move to Vulcan and start seeing a performance improvement. In fact, in this graph, the bottom two lines are OpenGL, right, is AMD, and green is NVIDIA. The top two lines are Vulcan, and what you can see is Vulcan is always faster than OpenGL, but AMD is now in the same weight category as NVIDIA. They are both really close together. And I think this is going to be really good for the community community because it means whichever company is providing a better video card and better hardware, you'll be able to use it. We won't just have to say use the Green Team on Windows. Whatever turns out to be good hardware, we're going to take efficient advantage of it. On OS X, we use the Metal API. So let's take a look at what happened there. Now, this is a CPU time graph, so it's like golf. Lower is better. And in this case, the bottom line is Metal, and it is consistently lower than OpenGL was. In some cases, such as having Siri shadows, I have seen it be up to 60% faster, because some of the new tech in X-Plane we couldn't use on Mac OpenGL, and so this is a big step forward for us, because we can use all the modern stuff. But I do also want to draw your attention to a second feature. Those big spiky dudes there, those are stutters. What you're seeing is that for those frames, the CPU just took way longer than it should have to draw the frame. And you experience that as stutter in the frame rate. And there's just way less of them in the Metal run. And this is expected because the Metal and the Vulkan drivers are designed to be very reliable. They give us guarantees that they're not going to just go and do a bunch of CPU work at a time that we don't want them to. So the problem with OpenGL is that while it does so much stuff, it doesn't always do it very fast, and we don't know what's in that green box. Like, there could be dragons and monsters in there, and sometimes they just go, we're gonna wait. That was something that we couldn't fix, but when we get to Metal and Vulkan, we start to see better performance. This is another scatter plot. This is Vulkan on AMD, and look at those red dots up there. That's the OpenGL driver having a bad day and taking a long time. And we're just not seeing nearly as many of those with Vulkan. So we think we're taking a big step in the right direction in terms of performance and smoothness. It is not done yet. We are flying.
So is it done?
Fantastic, but there's still two big things we have to do to go from, hey, we can fly, to, hey, we can ship this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what they are. The first one is texture paging. And I just want to show you this because I get this question a lot. People say, how is it that X-Plane is using 16 gigabytes of VRAM when I only have 4 gigabytes of VRAM? What's going on with your program? Well, X-Plane actually puts some of your textures in VRAM, there's the green box, and some in your system memory, that's the red box. Your VRAM is on the video card, it's very fast, but you probably don't have as much of it, and your system memory is on the motherboard, and you probably have twice as much of it. So we're going to put textures in a couple different places, right? And the textures that are in VRAM, we can draw with, and the textures that are in system memory, they're just kind of in the holding bag. And this is okay, because when we're drawing, stuff you can't see doesn't need to be in VRAM. Maybe the aircraft carrier is behind you, and X-Plane is smart enough to say, well, you can't see the aircraft carrier behind you. So it's okay that all those aircraft carrier textures are in system memory and not VRAM. But what happens when you turn your head? Then we go, uh-oh, we need the Nimitz texture, and it's not in the right place. And so then something kind of awful happens. First, we have to make some room in VRAM, so we have to drag all these textures over to system memory, and only then can we drag all these textures right back onto to VRAM, and then we can kind of fly. That is texture paging. Now, OpenGL does texture paging for us, which is fantastic because we didn't have to write a texture pager, but it does it just in time. So we're sitting there, we're drawing, and we go, how about the Nimitz? And it goes, oh my God, you want the Nimitz? Hang on 1 second, I'll be right back. And it goes off and does this, and you get a stutter, right? And this isn't something we can change because this is just how OpenGL works. So with Metal and Vulkan, we think we have a better model. We think we can keep low-res versions of some of these elements in VRAM at all times and page them in on the background so you can get smooth flight. So we think we have a great architectural solution, but this is not coded yet. So this is one of the two big things we need to do to go from we can fly it to we can ship. There's one other really, really big thing that we have to do before we can ship, and that is plugins. X-Plane is going to be running on Vulkan and Metal, a nice thin driver, and plugins are going to be running on OpenGL, because plugins have UI and they have EVIS displays and glass cockpits, and we want that stuff to work. So how do these things talk to each other? And the answer is, we're going to have to build this VRAM bridge to connect the output of the plugins to Metal and Vulkan and X-Plane so that you can see the results of the OpenGL plugins in your cockpit. And this is also not built yet. So this is the other major thing to do, is to get plugin support working. So right now what we have is a pretty cool tech demo. We can see Vulkan working. We can start to see that some design decisions are creating good results. But what we don't have yet is a finished product that we can ship. I also wanted to mention, moving to Vulkan and Metal, we're starting to get access to some really, really nice developer tools. Vulkan and Metal don't make your GPU go faster, but they do let us see what's going on the GPU for the first time so that we can make X-Plane go faster. So in the long term, I think this is going to be really good for us because we're going to have great diagnostics, and that's going to let us put in future performance optimizations. Here's the situation with compatibility that we're trying to make happen. So first of all, we're going to keep shipping OpenGL version of X-Plane for the life of X-Plane 11. And our goal with the OpenGL version of X-Plane is compatibility. If you have an add-on that's working using OpenGL, we do not want it to break. So we're trying to make all our decisions to keep OpenGL working the way it was so that add-ons can keep working. For running X-Plane with the Vulkan or Metal backend, we are trying to get it so that 2D UI and panel graphics, like glass screens, just work out of the box. We're building the VRAM bridge so that these add-ons can work unmodified, because there's just too many add-ons that do this that we need to have work. What we are not trying to do is have every unsupported workaround that add-ons are doing in OpenGL work in the Vulkan and Metal backends. We'll still have access to OpenGL to use those add-ons, but we're not trying to emulate OpenGL. We can't emulate OpenGL and still get the benefits of Vulkan and Metal. In terms of schedule, I may regret saying this, but our goal is to get some version, some kind of preview or developer build of the Vulkan or Metal version of X-Plane into people's hands this year. Maybe it'll be a developer preview, maybe it'll be an open beta, but we think we'll have something that people can at least try and see how it goes. I do not expect this to be final and finished this year. And the reason for that is that I think we're going to have a pretty long tail of bugs as we work out all the compatibility cases. I mean, X-Plane is being used by so many add-ons in so many ways. We're going to have to spend time with it and see what add-ons are doing and work out compatibility. But we can get a copy for developers, we get a copy for enthusiasts in the community, so people can try it and get experience with it and still fly under OpenGL at the same time. So that's what our roadmap looks like going forward with Vulkan and Metal. Just to summarize things, we've got a whole bunch of things that we've been working on this year. We've got Glomo, which we're trying to get done this summer. We've got X-Plane 1135, which we are going to release on Monday. And we've been making progress with the Vulkan and Metal version of X-Plane, which we'd like to develop a preview this year. We are running pretty tight on time, so I don't even have time to talk about all the developers who've on new versions of WEG and Blender. But a bunch of the team members are here, so find us later. If you're a developer, we'd love to talk to you about some of the things we're working on. If we have a few more minutes, we'd be happy to take questions and answers. Thank you very much.
All right, so there you have it, folks. Laminar Research with X-Plane 11.